In this video, what we're going to do is build the basement structurally down here, of course underneath the ground, because that's where the basement is. And so first thing we're going to do is start with the columns. And since this is a basement, most likely it would be built not out of steel but out of concrete. So we're going to use a concrete system for the basement. There's a variety of different ways to do it, but this will be a good experience for you to see how to use concrete. So we have our grids right here. The first thing we want to do is find a level at where we want the columns to start and where we want them to end. Okay, and I'm going to zoom in right here because we first need to look at, here's the basement finish floor, 14.6. That means there's going to be a slab that's on top of that, and then footings and the columns are going to, just like we did up here. So 6 inches below this, or however thick the slab's going to be, is going to be a level where the bottom of the column is and the top of the footing. Okay. So let's we're just going to create a grid. Go into architecture, a level, I'm sorry, not a grid, and I'm just going to throw one in here because we can move it. And that should be 6 inches below that, so I'm just going to move it up here. And so there's 1 foot, and so this should be 15 feet. So I'll minus 15 feet. And so there's 6 inches. So this, of course, is the basement's top of footing. So I'm just going to say basement TOF. TOF, top of footing. We're going to say yes. Okay, so that's where my footing is going to go, or the bottom of my column. And then the top of the column is going to go to the bottom of the slab here. So if the slab is 6 inches here, let's see, that's a finished floor, and right there is the top of the footing for the first level. Okay, or actually this is not the top of the footing, this is the bottom of the slab. And so let's create the column. So what I'm going to do, this right here is my site, right? So I'm going to just hide this. We'll unhide it later when we need it, but right now it's just kind of visually in the way. So I'm going to hide this element. Okay, and all I did was right click, select the element, right click on it, and then use the hide command. And so now we know where our columns need to start, and we know where they need to end. And so bottom of the slab and the top of the footing. And so what we're going to do is, since I drew that, we're going to find the top of the footing, and we're going to make that our plan. And I'll just WT this so that we've got and so there's our basement top of footing. And then we're going to go into columns again, and we want to do a vertical column, but we're going to load a family first because we don't have any concrete columns loaded. So we're going to go to vertical columns, load a family, and then we're going to go down here to columns, concrete, and you'll see some generic columns. Basically there are two types, round and square, and then two types of round and square. One of them is with a cap, and round and a square with a cap, or a rectangle with a cap. So you need to go to Allen and Iano and look at the size that you would need of a column. I'm just going to make a guess right now of 12 inches. So I'm going to download the square columns, and you'll see if we look in the square, there's already 1, 2, 3, 4 types made. Okay, a 12 by 12, an 18 by 18, a 24 by 24, and a 30 by 30. But if we were going to do a 16-inch column, for instance, we determined that it would take 16-inch column, then all we have to do is take one of these all we have to do is go into edit type, and we would duplicate this, and so I'll make us just a 12 and 12 and 18 and 18. So let's say this is a 16-inch by 16-inch column, 16 by 16. And then did I rename that 12 by 12? I think I duplicated it. Okay, and then I'm going to go in, and you'll see the B dimension, okay, is set to 1 foot, and we're going to set that to 16 inches, and now it's 1 foot 4 inches. Okay, so we now have a 12 by 12 and a 16. So that's how you would do it. If you want to do a rectangular column, then you need to download the rectangular column, and so we're just going to use 12 columns, and we're going to do the simple at grid points. At grid points, we're going to select our grid lines, and we're going to say, oh, we didn't select the height. I'm going to escape out of that, and right now we have it set by depth. We want it drawn by height, and we want it drawn to the bottom of the slab on level 1. Okay. So back to grids, select, finish, and you can see our little columns right there. Okay, there's our columns, and we've got some on the perimeter. And of course, to hold back the earth, since this is a basement, we're going to have to hold back the earth. We've got to put a wall in here, and to do that we want the wall to once again go all the way to the footing level. So let's cancel out of this, and just so this is easier to see, I'm going to drag these a little closer. Okay. So if our column goes from here to here, we want our wall to go that same distance. Okay, we want it to sit on top of the footing. And so we're going to go into walls here, and we're going to build a, let's go here, and we're going to build a structural wall in this case. Okay, and once again we're going to design it by height. Oh. And we're going to go to the top of the bottom of the slab with the wall instead of giving it a height. Here you'll see that on walls we can put them in by the center line of the wall, the core center line, and I'll talk more about that when we get into envelopes. But the finish face and the finish interior. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place that wall, okay, on this grid line because I want the wall to be on the outside of that grid line. Okay, and so half the column is going to be inside the wall, half the column is going to be outside the wall. And so I'm going to go to the finish face of the interior. So I'm going to set this by the finish face of the interior because I'm going to draw the interior face and then it'll draw the other side, right? And then we're going to go over here and pick the type of wall we want. Well, I want, it says a generic masonry wall right here. So I'm going to select, but I want mine to be 12 inches thick because I think it's going to take at least a 12-inch thick wall to do that. So I'm going to edit the type again and just duplicate it. And here we'll say 12 inches. And then delete the second. Okay, 12-inch masonry. Matter of fact, I'm going to say concrete masonry because masonry implies that it's a concrete block instead. And then, so we've got that. Now I'm going to edit the structure of that wall or the layers or components of the wall. And you'll see right here it's set to 5 5/8. Okay, I want that to be 1 foot. So 1 foot of that wall is a concrete masonry unit. We might want to add insulation to the outside of it and other things, but for right now we're just going to keep this fairly generic. And if we do, then we'll make us another wall type. And you can see it was set up to be a concrete block wall instead of a solid concrete masonry wall. So what I'm going to do is change these settings so that so this is the material setting. There's the identity, concrete masonry units. Okay. And so what we're going to do is just change this to concrete cast in place gray. Okay. It happened to show up here, but if it hadn't shown up there, I could type in concrete and you could see that. Okay, so I'm going to change this from concrete masonry units to concrete cast in place gray. And if you look here now, our graphic symbols are different. So the surface pattern will be a stippling, and then the cut pattern, when we cut through it, will be this concrete symbol, a standard ANSI concrete symbol. And then when we render it, it'll render with this, what they call the appearance. And we'll talk more about materials as we go along here. And then, of course, we can put physical conditions, basic thermal information to it, and if we wanted to, or they already have to this. So I'm going to say OK. So we've changed this to concrete cast in place. So we have a structure element that's 1 foot thick, concrete cast in place. And so its width is being defined by the edit of that section. We're going to say duplicate, I think everything else is OK. I'm going to say OK. And now I'm going to go in and draw walls, and I'll just do it by a series of lines. And so I'm going to go in here, snap to the center of that, and you can see it's drawing to one side. And I'll go down to here, snap. Snap. And you can see that these objects understand that they need to join with the concrete columns. Okay, now we could separate them if we want to, but actually this is probably the way in which it would be poured. In other words, the wall would be poured with these little, as I talked about in lecture, these little extrusions. pilasters there. And of course that's where the column's going to sit, right in the center of that right there. Okay, the steel columns up above here. So we can see the steel columns there. If we go over here to our elevation, we'll see we drew the walls. Okay. And we have our steel sitting on our columns there. Now, what would probably be better or easier to look at is if we had a section in this. So what we're going to do is come in and add a section. So we're going to go to View. We're going to go to Sections. I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to draw me a section from here to here. Okay, and this little box right here tells you what's cut by section. So everything inside this box right here is going to be included in the section. Everything else is going to be removed. If I want to cut through that column right there, of course the section line needs to be right through the middle of the column. So I'm going to set it so it cuts right through the column. Okay. And then to see that view, all we need to do is just double click on the little section symbol here. So move in here. Whoops, I flipped it. Don't want to flip it. Well, if I can get it. Come on. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to close this elevation now and WT it. And I'm going to use this section, but I'm going to make it so the section is taller. Now notice we can't see our steel, and then once again that's because this is set to coarse. I'm going to set it to medium, okay, so that both sides of our columns will appear. So now we've got the basement walls and the columns, and what we're going to now go in and do is place a slab inside the space. So we're going to go over to our slab here, and I'm just going to go into Structure, Floor Types, and you'll see a structural floor. And over here you'll see a lot of different types. Okay, lightweight concrete on metal deck, lightweight concrete on 2-inch metal, and when I get into envelope systems, I'll talk more about roofs and decks and floors and stuff like that. But you'll see there's no concrete, just concrete slabs here. So what I'm going to do is just take one of these generics, select it, and say Edit Type, and I'm going to duplicate it. And then I'm going to say concrete. I'm just going to call it a concrete slab, and we're going to make it a 6-inch concrete slab. And then I'm going to edit its structure. So now it's not a foot, it's going to be 6 inches. And once again, I'm going to go select concrete. So, and my concrete comes up here, place it. So I'm going to select that as concrete. And we're going to say, okay, okay. Now, when you're drawing a slab, it assumes that you're going to draw it by depth. So wherever your finished floor is, it's going to draw it from that finished floor down into the model in the direction. So I'm going to close this top of footing and open the level 1, because that's where I want this to go to. And I'm going to WT it here. Okay. And so now we have that concrete slab and we're ready to draw. So we're going to come in here. Oops. Oh, section. Yeah, we want to draw in this view right here. And we're going to draw a rectangle. And then we're just going to zoom in. We want it to go from, oh, I'm sorry. I'm drawing a slab up here for the first floor. I want to draw this at the bottom. Okay, so we want to go to the basement top of floor. Yeah, we want to draw that there. Sorry, I got mixed up there. So we're going to go in and just draw a slab from that corner right there And of course it's going to go through those columns, and we won't worry about that at this point. We can fix that later. But what we can see right here is that once I drew those lines in, we get these little locks. And if I click on these locks, what it does is that Revit found another object in the same location as the line that I drew, which was the walls, right? And so what it did is it says, do you want to lock the slab to that wall? And I'm telling it, yes, I do want to lock it to the wall, because that way if I move these walls any, my slab is automatically resized and moves with the wall. So that ties everything together. And so that should be fine. I'm going to say check, okay. And we can see that now, okay, I have this wall, the floor, and the floor is in the wrong place. Okay, it should have been, let's break this real quick. Basement finished floor. I'm sorry, I went top of footing. That wasn't top of floor, that was top of footing. But that's easy to fix. Maybe it's even good that it happened so that I could show you how to fix it. Okay, so it's in the wrong location, so I'm going to select it, and you'll see right over here the level that it was drawn at. And if I want to offset it some, I can. I don't want to offset it from that top of, but what I'm going to do is change its location to basement finish floor, right, and apply it. And now it's where I wanted it to be. Okay, it's going to the wall. Of course, this is a section, so we're seeing where it cut through. And so now we have our floor in. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to put footings, pilasters, not pilasters, pilings, and grade beams in on this.